evening and welcome to Get Naked with John. I'm here with Bernie and Toby Boulay. They're in the comfort of their home right now. And yes, we are recording this on a Sunday morning, bringing you a COVID-19 special. Bernie and Toby, you may already know, are the face of Green Shirt Day. It's a movement inspired by their son, Logan Boulay, who was one of the victims of the Humboldt bus crash. Since that event, they have been catapulted into a movement of generosity to increase organ donation around our country and perhaps even the world. I don't know. We'll have to find out here. Bernie and Toby, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Dawn, for inviting us.
In the spirit of Green Shirt Day, I think it's kind of important that we know a little bit about the fella behind everything, and that would be Logan. Could you just share a little bit for those who really aren't as familiar with the story about Logan and who he was and what he was about?
Go ahead.
So, all right. So 2 years ago, there was the Humboldt Bronco bus crash, and Logan was a third-year defenseman on that team. He's an assistant captain, and the team is traveling up the highway in rural Saskatchewan on their way to a playoff game. They had 2 days earlier gone off the game that went into triple overtime, and they lost. And this could have been their last game, and Logan assured us on the 5th, the night before, that they were going to win, that they were going to work hard. So they were on that bus, they were traveling down the highway, and a semi-truck ran a stop sign and went right into the path of the bus, and the bus crashed into it. And that is now called the Humboldt bus crash. And from there, Logan got extracted from the bus and was taken to Nipawin, where he then was sent by air ambulance to Royal University Hospital in Saskatoon. And Logan, when we finally arrived at Saskatoon, Toby and I, we were actually about 50 minutes behind maybe 10 minutes behind the bus. And,
10 minutes, yeah.
And we got to the hospital in Nipawin, and they told us that he'd been airlifted. So we went to RUH with all kinds of ideas in our head. They told us that Logan probably had a broken spine and would probably be paralyzed, and we thought, we can deal with that. We are positive. Things that can still happen. He's athletic. He could be a Paralympian. He could still be involved in all kinds of things. And then we got to the hospital, and at first they wouldn't let us go to where Logan was. And then they said, he is in ICU. We've located him. So we got to ICU, and we were actually met right at the door at ICU by Logan's nurse, who had on his phone a Facebook picture of us, of the picture of our family in Waterton that has been posted in many places. Mm-hmm. And they took us to a room in the hospital, and at the hospital there was the doctors who were all involved. There were a social worker, the nurse, the resident, and that's when we got the news that Logan had a brain injury that he was not going to be able to survive or to recover from. And that's when I said, is it possible to donate organs from Logan, because he wasn't going to need them where he was going, and that he was young, he's healthy, he's strong, and someone could really benefit from his organs, which he would no longer need. And that's kind of where it all started.
Right. Now, with organ donation, and I, as I understood it, Logan had made sort of that conversation with you happen beforehand. He had sort of decided that this was something that was really important to him.
Yes, there's two conversations. One, he had Rick Suggett, his fitness coach and mentor, a really good friend of mine. He passed away on June 27th, 2017. And Logan was really touched by that, obviously, because Logan had made a really strong connection.
Right.
And so in August of 2017, we were just sitting on our back deck like Logan and I did. And just out of the blue, he literally out of the blue, he just says, I'm going to register to be an organ, sign up to be an organ donor when I, just before my birthday or on my birthday, because if Rick can donate 6 organs to save 6 lives, so can I. And I looked right at him and I laughed and I said, well, you'll be 80 years old and don't want your organs. He said, then he laughed back and he said, no, that's what I'm going to do. And as a dad, I guess I didn't want to discuss his mortality.
No.
I didn't want to go there, so I just moved on to another topic. Fast forward to what Bernie described, and so we're now in ICU, and we
just really
when Bernie offered
later.
Yeah, like the night of the crash,
Mm-hmm.
when Bernie offered Logan's organs, she turned and looked at me in the room, that room that you see on TV all the time.
Yeah.
And I said, well, Logan and I had that conversation. So they said, oh, well, so then that way you go. So then we agreed to do the registration. And then that night in ICU, the Paulson family, where Logan was staying, that's his billet family in Humboldt, they got to where we are. It's 3 hours away from the crash site to the hospital.
Right.
And I was discussing with the transplant nurse, because Bernie was with Logan. And all of a sudden I was saying, well, Logan had done this and this and this. And then McLaren Paulson, Logan's billet brother, goes, well, he signed his donor card on his birthday. And we all looked at him, what are you talking about? And he said, then he told his side of the story that him and Logan had been running errands in Logan's little Jetta, and they had been parked out front. And McLaren is 13 years old and bugging, hey, what are you doing for your birthday? You're going to be 21. You're going out, all that kind of stuff. And Logan said, no, I'm going to sign my donor card and become a organ donor. It's like Rick, and he explained the story to McLaren, and McLaren's like, wow. And so McLaren said that, and that's where we are. So he told me, he told McLaren, and away we go.
When you think about journeying this way, we always try to find meaning. Is there some piece that you've been able to find some meaning at all in the journey so far? That's a tough question, maybe.
We'll both answer it. Bernie can go first.
So I think it's trying to find a positive out of something that's so tragic.
Mm-hmm.
We could have literally just taken what happened and closed our blinds and closed our doors and just stayed in our house. Or we could take what has happened and try to make some change and to change how people see organ donation. We have, hard to say, a vehicle, I guess you would maybe call it, of a way that we can make that change and a way that we can make a difference. I noticed that we often know when we're at different places that people who are organ recipients or their families of an organ recipient, how they are so thankful to us for changing the whole way that people see organ donation and organ donor registration. Because for every time that there's an organ donor registration, that means that there's just that one more possibility that someone who's waiting for an organ, that it might actually come. There's over 4,300 people that are waiting for organs. Is that the right number?
Yes.
Yes. And so this is our way to be able to get something positive out of something that was so tragic for our family, for 28 other families, and a big extension, a community and a nation almost.
Yeah.
I mean, Dawn, the Humboldt Broncos, they never won every game in the 3 years Logan was there, and they would lose. Sometimes they'd lose bad. And I would text Logan after every game in the morning after, and I'd ask him, did the sun come up? And he'd always come back, yeah, sun came up, because literally it's just a hockey game. Your world didn't end. So we'd have a running joke every morning after a game. He'd expect me to text him, and he would say, I'm still in bed, or I haven't looked out the window. And then he'd text back, yeah, I'm looking out. The sun came up in Humboldt today, but it's cloudy, or whatever it was, or it's snowing. And so after the crash, I made that comment, and I had lots of people come up to me and say, the sun's up today. And I was moved by that. So we have a screen door in our glass front door, and we literally have that open, not today, but when it's nice out, it was open that whole summer. From after we got home on April 10th, we got home, or 9th when we got back to Lethbridge, we opened our door, and anybody who wanted to stop in would just stop in. And it's like that now all the time. Our doors open and the sun comes in.
The sun comes in. It's these little sort of traditions, I think, when I talk to other people who've experienced loss, myself included. And what I find interesting about what you chose to do, you found a way to invite the conversation of grief into your home with that on the door. And I remember doing the same thing after my husband passed, as I had a black wreath and I hung it on the front of our door. I'd heard about this old tradition from somebody else and realized if you hang it on the door for the year, then it means that people can come in and they can talk about it. They don't have to shy away from it. And sometimes that's some of the most painful parts of people not understanding how to handle grief, is that they stop talking about your loved one, right? Or trying to gloss over. Is that part of the reason that you found that tradition, or that idea of the sun comes up, putting it on the front of the door, it worked for you?
We received on so many, you can only imagine the gifts we received from around the world. And one person sent us a beautiful wreath with 16 yellow roses on it. So that's what we hang on our front door. But the idea was to have the door open. It's just the number of gifts that we've received, and we find it very inviting for people to come in and just join us, knock on the door, come on in. Our best friends just come on in. If the door's open, they just walk in. And we've had friends drive by, oh, the Boulet's door's open, and they'll turn around, stop, get out, and come in. Knock on the door, come in. It's just a nice way to do that. It just, I don't know.
Yeah.
You want to
I think that one of the things, like being able to talk to you or to talk to other media people, or even like when we've been able to speak at a banquet or a gala or whatever, is that we get to share about Logan and we get to talk about Logan. So I think you're very right in the fact that often when people have to deal with grief and loss and death, that other people come and they gloss over it. They don't want to say that person's name. They don't want to say Logan's name. They don't want to talk about Logan because they're worried it might upset us.
Right.
But it's kind of, you have to, if they are truly our friends, they're just going to be able to sit there and
be with
when we start to cry or do this, that they know that it'll pass, that we just have a lot of emotion and we'll get past it. And if they don't want to be there, then I'm not sure that they're the people to be there then.
Yeah. And so much too, like people don't understand that just because you're showing emotion and crying doesn't mean that emotion, it doesn't come from a really loving, wonderful place, right? Which was your love for Logan.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I thank you so much for talking to that, because I think part of the problem that coming out of something, on a loss and a grief is trying to get other people to understand how to support other people in that. And I'm so glad to hear that you were the recipient of so much support and kindness and gifts. What would you say maybe to those folks who took it silently or don't have that kind of support, etc.? What would you say to them about trying to move forward?
Well, I'll take a step back and just real quick, then I'll go to that answer.
Yeah, please.
As particularly in the world of organ transplantation, organ transplant, we honestly believe, we believe, and we've been told this many, many times that we're on the right track, that we speak for those who can't talk, those who don't know how to talk, that don't have an audience, and don't have the ability.
Yeah.
We do all that. And so families within the tragedy, some of the families, they don't want to talk. They don't know how to talk, and they just want to be amongst themselves, just fine with us. And so and there's other, if you look at the 16 families that people of the angel family, we call them angel families. There's some of those families are like us. They're very outspoken, and they are out communicating all the time, and they have the communication skills, I guess, to do that. Other families choose not to. So I guess if you're an introvert family, an introvert person, then just when someone comes to your door, let them in. I mean, that's what I would say. Yeah. And then just have the conversation with a couple of people you want to talk to. If you don't want to talk to your viewers today, which on Tuesday will be a lot, then don't do that. But we're okay with that. We believe that we are speaking for people that just can't do it or don't have the ability.
Yeah.
One of our daughter Mariko's friends, she was in a similar situation that her sister was passed away following a car crash. And they were actually in England, and they were both in England, but not in the same place. And Mariko's friend happened to be the very last one in the family to find out about the crash and about her sister's death, even though she was physically the closest person to that. And she, it's been over 10 years since her sister passed, and she was having a talk one day. And so we went to this talk, and it was post-crash for us. And she specifically addressed the fact, like, what do you do with the people who you think are your friends, but when they gather with you, they don't want to talk about your loved one? And she said she found that she ended up distancing herself from those people after a while, because for her, she wanted to talk about her sister. She wanted to remember. And I think that that's something that we've really done. Like, we've gathered those memories, like have people write down their memories, have people write down their stories about Logan, things that we don't know, that we can go back and look later and say, oh yeah, that's really funny, or oh, I remember Logan talking about that. But it's having someone else share, and so that's really important.
Yes.
I have a friend whose dad just passed away just over a month ago, and she said to me, she goes, I understand why you always want to collect those stories and why those stories are so important, because I see that now. I see how the stories are important. And she goes, I kind of just sat there and we talked stories before, but now I really understand, she said, that why those stories are important, because your loved one's story kind of ends, so you need to gather all those stories from before.
And they become so precious, right? More than absolutely anything that you could possibly have of them left. Yeah. Those stories, because they're a piece of what you loved about them.
Exactly.
And at Mariko's friend that we went to the talk with, she also said that it's not so much talking about Logan in the conversation, it's about how Logan can just weave in and out of the conversation. How you can just, one of our friends or family just said, well, remember Logan did this? Or it's
right.
It's not us saying, yeah, it's not like us saying, we're talking about Logan now. Everybody listen. No, it's just like you're just talking and he comes in from the experience.
Because you can't cut him out of your history, right? And he should weave just as naturally, into your present as he did in the past. I can understand that those conversations and the flow of those conversations should be natural, and people don't often know how to make that happen.
And with the child, I was told this last 3 weeks, somewhere around there. I get told lots all the time. We're just talking with someone, and they said, well, when your mother or father passed away, you don't say you're an orphan. No. So we still have 2 children. We have Mariko and Logan. One's in heaven, one's in Lethbridge. So we just start counting how many kids do you have? Well, 1. No, we have 2. Because I'm not an orphan. My mom and dad are still alive, but I won't be an orphan once they pass. Neither will Bernie be an orphan.
I noticed that when you said, Bernie, that when you were in the hospital and you were making that realization, can we give his organs? Because he's not going to need them where he's going. It wasn't that it was an end. It was that he won't need them where he's going. He's still with us. He's still here. He's still present in whatever form that we can have him. It's just not, with flesh. And I noticed that little piece of you, and I thought that was really poignant, and it can be a real source of strength, I would imagine, for you. I was wanting to sort of dip back, if we could, a little bit to some of the misconceptions that people might have about organ donation that you might have run across that maybe stop people from donating organs. I think sometimes people think it might be not what it really is. Could you speak to a little bit of maybe that misconception?
Which one? There's 10.
I know. Any one of them that are preventing people from donating. Because like you said, there's 4,300 people whose lives could be saved or made significantly better.
Yeah. When we first started on the organ donor awareness trail journey, we got people saying, but how do I know that the people in ICU, the doctors in Emerge, the critical care people how do I know that they're actually going to try to save me? They might say, oh, this person would be a good candidate for organ donation and they could make 6 lives better. Their life won't be very good. They won't try to save me. And I just kind of would look at them and go, live in Canada. Like, that's the doctors aren't going to think. They might think, hey, this person is a candidate for organ donation, but they will do everything they can to try and save you. And we certainly saw that with the crash, that there were people that those doctors did absolutely everything. There were people that they were able to save, and there were people that they weren't able to save. But I think that one's that one's a big one, that people really think that doctors will not try to save them.
It's not just doctors, it's also the paramedics on the ground right there. They're working so hard to get Logan to the hospital. And we were on the crash site, and you see that. And we talked to a firefighter paramedic friend of ours a year ago, and he said, no, we do everything to get that person to the hospital to change hands in ICU. Good. Emergency.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So I think, so we hear that they will just try and take my organs, or that, I guess mostly it's just the fact that people are reluctant because they think that they're not going to be saved at that time. I think that that shouldn't be a factor, because if you are actually at that point where you're not going to be able to be saved, that if you've registered, you've had that conversation, your family knows that, they don't have to try and make a decision in a really tragic, emotional time, that has already been made for them, and they're just carrying out your wishes. So I think that that's really important. One of the big things that people probably don't realize is that if your loved one is not going to survive and they're going to be an organ donor, that they actually get to live a little bit longer, even if it's machine assisted. So like for us, we got to spend about 27 hours with Logan in the hospital that we probably wouldn't have gotten to spend with him had once they declared that he was brain passed, that they would have just been shutting down machines and shutting off the respirator. But that's actually all that they had to have on him, because the rest of his organs were all still functioning. And so they would have shut the respirator off, and we would have just sat there and slowly watched him expire. But instead, we got to walk with him down the hallway at the hospital. We got to go to the operating room, and at the operating room, we got to hug him and hold him and talk to him, and he was still very warm, and it was like he was sleeping. And we got to see him off, and we knew it was going to happen, and we knew that we weren't going to see him like that again. But it was, to me, that was better than sitting there watching him slowly stop breathing and to watch him flatline. So,
and you had
Logan
to say goodbye.
Yeah, Logan was in a beautiful state. He had no visual cuts. He had a small bruise on his shoulder blade in the back. He had a little bit of a cut that they sorted out, and then that's it. And he had a cut in his toe. Everything else was internal. And so we had our 27 hours. We could, as Brittany said, read stories to him. We contacted people to send us his favorite story. Like, do you have this book? And they'd send us chapters from a book from their own collection. And we'd read book stories to Logan and do all kinds of things.
We sang songs, we laughed, we joked. So those were kind of the nice things about being able to spend that extra time with him. Yeah. Just because of the opportunity and where we were at too, that made a difference. It just made his life carry on a little bit longer. Right. Then like his life here, his physical life carry on a little bit longer. So that part was a big benefit, I think, for us. It also allowed people like our family to get there, to be there, because Saskatoon
if your daughter was traveling with you.
Yeah.
No, it was just Toby and I that were there. And my cousin Marika was in Edmonton at that time. She's working on her Master's of Occupational Therapy. And my cousin drove through the night with her, and they got to the hospital. And my brother brought my mom and dad here from Lethbridge, and they drove. They got up early in the morning and drove. And I had an aunt and uncle two aunts and an uncle that came from Edmonton and while Logan was still there with us in the hospital. And so just, it also gave that bit of time that probably wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Absolutely. My mom and dad are 90, and my dad's in his 90s. My mom, very late 80s, we told my family to stay with mom and dad, stay in Alberta. One more little thing, I guess, is about why people don't want to do transplants is Logan had an open casket because he was beautiful. Mm-hmm. I asked that question. I said, well, can we have an open casket? And they said, yes. Okay.
But that, I think, is a problem that people seem to think that if they take their organs, that it's going to change the appearance of their loved one, and that they just can't bear that, maybe.
Exactly. With Logan's cornea transplant, all they do is take off the corneas. He was there. They just closed your eyelids. We couldn't tell.
Yeah.
And yeah, well, another thing, our last ICU nurse we had, she was a veteran ICU, very veteran. And those bracelets you get at the hospital, you put your name on it.
Put your meds on.
Yeah.
And stuff.
She brought us a whole bunch and said, well, what I like to do is in this situation, in an organ retrieval or something like that, she gave us pens, and we wrote little messages and then just put the straps on. And then we texted people, phoned people, and they told us. So we spent a couple hours just on Logan's ankles. He's a pretty muscular guy, so as far as they'd go up on his legs, on his arms. And then when we were in the viewing room,
so we had like them all up his arms and on his legs, and he's going into the operating room, so we kind of thought that they might take them off. But when we got to the viewing, he got brought back to Lethbridge, and when we got to see him again, he was all dressed up, and I felt his arms, and the bracelets were still on. They were still on his arms. So the nurse from ICU said, those are just your messages that you could send off with Logan, so we know that. And he still had them, so he still has them now.
So this really does dispel that idea that people would not care about the life in front of them to save them as much as they possibly can. When you see and you hear how much care that people put into Logan and his treatment and his care and trying to do what they can. And I know from my own personal experience that my husband had died at home, and basically the hospital wouldn't give up and kept working on them, in a sense, just to, I think, for themselves too, right? And for the family, to try to get there as much as possible. And nobody is going to choose a life that they don't see over the life that's sitting there right in front of them. And I think you've done a very good job of dispelling that myth, clearly.
Thank you. We generally don't get much time to talk about them, so we're nice that we have time today. Most time, we did a global interview this morning for our morning show, and it's 4 minutes.
Yeah.
I'm enjoying this.
I'm glad, because, an hour does give us a little bit of time to actually get in more than a sound bite, and it's an important topic on so many levels. And so I appreciate that you've been willing to really open up and share. And I think that your ability to help people, certainly be more comfortable with organ transplant and hopefully bring some miracles out of some tragedies is really key. But also, having known a couple of other folks who've lost children and struggle with grief, and I know I belong to a widows, support group kind of thing. There's a lot of folks that really struggle moving forward. And I know the difference between moving on and moving forward. What have been some of the things that you think have stood you in good stead in the path of moving forward when when so often, and I speak to Margaret Erickson, whom I think you also both know, Margaret and Stu, having talked to them so much, and Margaret being such an advocate for suicide prevention, etc., for the loss of their son, and speaking to her too about the difference. A lot of couples don't move forward well, and a lot of marriages and families often break up with the stress afterward. What are some of the things that you found that were successful that help you move forward?
One thing that I really like, and I'm probably going to steal Bernie's right now, is the 29 families are connected through WhatsApp. There's a group with WhatsApp with all the billets and everything. And then there's a group with just the families. And then there's a group of the angel families. And you can go on to the angels, for example, the angel families, and you can say what you want, because everybody in that group is in the exact same situation. So we have 15 other, and even though we're the only family in Lethbridge, but we know there's a family just south of Regina. There's a family in Humboldt, and there's 2 families in Humboldt, and you can connect. And when there's an issue, and there's lots of issues, Dawn, with the scope and size of this tragedy, the national scope, we don't have enough time for me to list all the issues that have happened to our families in the last 24 months.
Right.
But when there is an issue, we can solve it with conversation, and then you pick up the phone and you call that person again if you have to in a couple of days. But it gets solved. So it's nice to be able to know that there are lots of grieving families out there that lost children, like we have lost our son.
Yeah.
But I don't know if they have the support network that we instantaneously had. Chris Joseph, one of the Jackson Joseph's dad, he said right at the get-go, like right away, we're going to have to get along for 35 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that is probably a benefit, I don't know, of the way that our tragedy happened, is that we aren't alone, that we have other people that are along on this journey with us. There's people who have lost a husband or a son or a spouse or a daughter and a wife. People lost all kinds of different relationships. But we're all together, so we've kind of all been able to have that same journey. It's not the same, everybody has a different journey, but we've all been able to travel along together and be able to support each other, that we can sit there and we can cry or we can laugh together, and it's okay. We all just accept that. I think something that has been a benefit, another benefit I guess for us, is the fact that our tragedy is very public. And so you just have to say a couple keywords and people will go, oh, okay, I get that and I understand it. So they're not talking to us and going through a conversation and saying something and not realizing what our loss might be. And I think that is a bit helpful too for us. So, I mean, not that this is a benefit, but I guess it sort of is that we've had that.
So I think one of the things, if I hear you correctly, the number one thing, that if people have suffered a loss, that they need to try to find a community for support, but also understand that there are parts of the process that are really quite normal, that are not out of the realm. Like, you're going to experience that, and other people will have experienced that too. You shouldn't feel ashamed or embarrassed or upset. And I can hear a little bit of, like, when you say benefit, you're like, ugh, I hate using that word benefit because it's attached to this tragedy. And at the same time, maybe the idea would be that it's something of benefit that came after.
Yeah.
Instead of linking because.
Yeah. And also, we went to a adult counseling group, and I really enjoyed that. So did Bernie. I know that Bernie went to some individual counseling. I didn't go, not because I don't know if I needed it or not. It doesn't really matter. I had my coffee crew. I was retired. It was different. And so, what you said, people say stupid things. At that document we talked before, Mariko's friend, she had these rules. And one of the rules she had is that forgive everybody for the next 5 years for something stupid they say. And we all laughed, and we're like, and now we're 2 years in, Bernie, and I'm like, she's absolutely bang on right. People still say things like, you just look at them like, oh, okay, well, let it roll, and you go back to what you're trying to talk about. Because like, right. I can't believe you said that, but I'll forgive you for 3 more years. If you say in year number 6,
three more years,
then I'm going to blast you and say, that's it. We've had
I like going with, I understand the intention of your comment, which I know you mean to be loving and caring. But, and I have to say, I'm going to admit this right now because I think this is a very important distinction and I think it should be shared. I've used, and I don't know, because I remember consciously thinking this wasn't an accident. So don't say the word accident. Sure enough, I typed the word accident. This, to be very clear, was not an accident. And now, Toby, could you speak to that a little bit so that we can make sure maybe that that little piece of education is out in there?
Yes, this was not an accident in any shape or form. It's a crash, and the reason it's a crash because Mr. Sadu was charged and he pleaded guilty to all counts, and there was no real trial, just a after. So he's in prison right now, serving time for the crash. It was distracted driving, causing deaths of 16 people, and 13 people were injured for life. And so it's not a crash. An accident's an accident, and it's not that sad. So I most time I write the word, it's the Bronco bus. I write the word tragedy. I don't even like the word trashed, and I crash. Sorry. I like tragedy, but it's not an accident. There never was an accident. Never was an accident in any of our minds.
No.
It was a crash.
I think too, when people try to avoid the conversations with you, when they use words like accident instead of tragedy, it's all that way of let's not feel the immensity, the gravity, the sadness of this, right? Let's try to lighten it a little bit. But really, that is a bit of a problem because life isn't always happy. And then it minimizes the amount of strength and courage that you've had and other people like you and, you know, the other families who've really had to learn how to move forward through all of this. One of the things that I was thinking when something like this happened, certainly when you lose somebody, you also lose the future, what you kind of hoped. And I had wondered, was part of the loss compounded by the fact that you might have lost your hockey family? Because I know hockey people and you get very close to the other families in the team and that lifestyle. But it sounds to me like you guys have managed to keep part of that very much alive.
Yeah, I would say that we have, and that it has to do with all those connections that you have the choice. You have the choice to continue having those connections or to let them fall away and to lose them. I think that anybody can take that bit of advice, like to continue to keep those connections. So we have the families that are here in Lethbridge that we have met with because we choose to do that and we choose to get together. So there's a group of families that we try to, or well, parents, and that we try to get together to have dinner every once in a while with. And when it's someone's turn and they haven't organized something, someone else gets on that little text group and says, hey, it's your turn to organize this. We've stayed connected to other people who aren't in that little group, but they're in other groups that we have of our hockey family. And I think it's a lot that choosing to be connected that way and not and knowing that we also need to take that step to continue to be connected, because there are people who are like, we're going to give them space. We're not going to give them that. We don't want to crowd them. We don't want to force them into being in a place where they don't want to be. And so sometimes we have to take that step, but we greatly appreciate the people who continue to be connected to us. Whether it's our hockey family. Mariko played ringette from the time she was 6 till she was 23 years old. And so we have a ringette family that we continue to be connected to. We have our school families. And then we just have other families that we are connected to in other various ways. And it's that two-way street that when they offer that, we need to say, yeah, we can do that, even though we may not feel like going for coffee or going for a walk or something, that we just kind of continue to do that. And usually we feel a little bit better after that, because sometimes it might be the distraction you need. It just might be that connection. It might be that opportunity to share stories that you just haven't heard before, or that you're wanting to just tell again.
I like that you picked up on that point, that sometimes you don't feel like doing it, but you know it's going to be good for you, so you do it anyway.
With yes, you just got to go. Sometimes you just got to get up, put your pants on, take your sweats off, and get out the door and go meet the guys for coffee.
Yeah.
With the connections back to hockey, with the Broncos, it was a junior hockey team, and the boys get traded. And if you go back through the rosters, which you probably haven't, you probably won't, you don't have to, but it's online. And sometimes there's 60 guys roll through the team in a year. So there's parents, and we would only meet parents as we go out to a game, and they had to be the same game we went to. Because there's boys from, one year he had a young man from up in Northwest Territories, and he's selling a guy from Nanaimo. So you're not going to see those parents maybe ever. It's the game you went to. Well, so there's some parents that live around Saskatoon or in there that no matter when you show up, well, they're there. But you don't necessarily talk to them because they're in the lobby after the game waiting for their son to come out.
Yeah. And
you're in the lobby after the game. As soon as Logan walks out, you go right to Logan. Nice talking to you, off you go. Because you may not see those people because that guy's son could be traded the next day.
Right.
So you make connections, but not really tight ones.
Gotcha.
And so a couple of the best friends we made since the tragedy, we met them once. That's it. And this is by accident. And they thought we were somebody else, and we thought they were somebody else. And on our way after a game to meet in the hallway, we were waiting for Logan, and they were waiting for their son. And we thought, well, that must be so-and-so's mom. Well, we're not really sure. And it wasn't. So, okay, well, see you later. But now we're really good friends because tragedies brought us together. So in this case, we do have bronchial. Logan was on the team for 3 years. So people know our faces. They know us. We know lots of people. Most of the people post-tragedy, we'd never met those families before, ever.
And now have a bond, like you say, for the next 35 years.
Exactly. The Joseph family, we'd only met in seeing them. Maybe shook his hand once, and then Chris is the one who said that, and he was absolutely right. For the next 35, 40, 50 years, we're going to see a lot of each other. So we got to get along. And we all looked at him. You're right. And we've got along. Just like any family, there's ups and downs, goods and bads, but you got to sort it out and move forward.
Yeah. And when you choose that family, actually, sometimes that's because you know why you made that choice. It's a pretty strong bond to have done that with, right?
And there are people within the Humboldt family that choose to be more connected, and there's ones that choose to not be as connected, and they just kind of come in. We'll have an event, they'll come, or they may not come, and that's okay. We just accept that, and they're still part of the family. And when we want people to come, we invite them, and if they are able to, if they feel that they can or if they want to, then they come. So
it's very open.
Yeah, everybody still connects through the WhatsApp. There's no, I like giving credit to WhatsApp. That's my commercial for the day. But even the ones that don't come very often or have never come, they still connect through WhatsApp. Their comments, their statements, their thoughts and feelings are in there, and you can read, and you can still phone those people. And it's awesome. I mean, it's the best we can get in a shitty situation.
Yeah,
it's very like the Bronco family that was on that team, that was on that bus, is spread really from Winnipeg all the way to Slave Lake to us here in Lethbridge, to northern Saskatchewan, and so it's spread apart quite a bit. And you don't think of it being that far apart, but physically it is, and it's hard to always get together even to.
Yeah. Thank goodness for social media, really.
Yes.
In a lot of ways.
Thanks for the family on Sunday. We Skyped with this family on Sunday. We practiced with the family on Sunday, and then we got to talk to them just because we had to do some global Winnipeg stuff together with that family. So we practiced on Skype, and we got to see them. It's kind of cool.
That's excellent. That reminds me, welcome to Jess FM. This is Get Naked with John, your host, John Style-Verge. You can catch us on jessfm.ca, which will also take you to both our YouTube and our Facebook pages. We're here today with Bernie and Toby Boulay, parents of Logan Boulay, and also the faces of greenshirtday.ca, which is a movement to increase and improve an understanding and awareness about organization. Thank you again for coming. We're having a great conversation. If you've just come in. This happens where then I do the interruption and then lose the complete track of my thoughts. I was kind of thinking too, in terms of organ donation, how simple of a process is that for folks to sign up and and have their organs donated?
In Alberta, it was quite cumbersome, and they're in the process of. I just got off the phone last week with someone from Alberta Health Services. It's a two-stage process. You have to register online. You have to print the document. You have to literally sign it, scan it, fax it back. Or when you get your driver's license done, it can be done in office. They just do it for you right there. You just sign the form. But if you do it online, it's 2 stages. The Alberta government is in the midst of streamlining and changing that. They expect it to be done by the end of April. Of course, with the pandemic, that stopped them from having it done in, like, it was supposed to be done in January. But it's just like, we don't have enough hands, and that's fine. So that was explained. I got a phone call, and that was explained to me. So right now it's a 2-step process. You go online, you register, Alberta Health number, all that stuff, and then you have to print it and scan it or whatever, sign it, send it off.
Okay.
That's going to change to because in Ontario and BC, it's just a 1-stage process, and away you go. Saskatchewan, they're just in the midst of building their online registry. There's only 6 provinces in Canada that have online registry. Saskatchewan will be the 7th one. Right. Some provinces still you have to get it only when you get your driver's license or you go into a licensing place.
Okay.
So every province is a little bit different on how they do registrations, and so that's difficult because people always say, oh, well, how do we register? Well, there's not a central overlying umbrella for the whole nation. It's by province because healthcare is provincial authority, and so you have to kind of go to whatever your province is, and it is getting easier for people to register, but you still have to do it. So I guess the benefit is that you actually have to make that decision to be a registered donor, and it's just not like, oh yeah, check the box.
And so when Canadian Blood Services, they have a division called the Organ and Tissue Transplantation Division. And so when they calculated the numbers of 100,000 in the month after the Bronco tragedy, that was looking at trends and individual provincial updates on the registry. What they would normally get in Alberta might be 100 for a weekend. Well, all of a sudden Alberta spiked with 4,000. Well, that was then directly attributed to the Logan Boulet effect. Wow. Only 6 provinces have online registration, so they had to make guesstimations of what they thought they had. Like even in Saskatchewan, you had a flood of paper registrations through registries and people phoning the government health services like, what do we do? How do we register? Yeah. So since that time, they've set up some kind of analytics. I don't know how it works, but they've been able to calculate direct registrations due to the Humboldt Bronco tragedy and the Logan Boulet effect. Because we clearly understand that if Logan had been in a car accident in southern Alberta, got airlifted to Lethbridge, and in the same situation we're in, and we got to spend time with Logan, and we decided to donate his organs because that's what he wanted to do, we would have had 400 at his funeral, and we wouldn't be having Green Shirt Day, more than likely. So we understand clearly that the Humboldt Bronco tragedy threw this in the national scope. Mm-hmm. So they've been able to calculate. Now it's coming into the Green Shirt Day campaign for this year. There's about 300,000 that they've attributed to the Logan Boulet effect and the Humboldt Bronco tragedy. And we'll find out, takes about a month and a half after to find out what the numbers are. Right. But they're expecting a large uptick again. Like it just kind of like
waves.
Goes all of a sudden, boom, and it flattens out and just goes.
Yeah.
But
that makes sense. And I want to make sure that I heard this correctly. My understanding was that Logan was the only individual that was able to donate organs after the tragedy.
Well,
yes.
Yeah, there's 14 that actually passed away at the crash site. And then there was only Logan and Dana Bronze, who's the athletic therapist, that actually survived past crash. And then later passed. So Logan survived the 1 extra day, and Dana survived actually to the 11th. And they were in the process of putting together all the transplants kind of things, because she was a registered organ donor, and they were able to donate kidneys because, as we said, the critical care staff was working very, very hard to help her survive. And so her body was filled with lots of medications and all kinds of chemicals. And the only organ that was able to be donated was her kidneys. But it progressed very quickly, and she was not able in the end to be a donor because of all the medical distress and stuff. So that's why Dana wasn't able to be an organ donor, but the rest of the people who passed away were all passed away at the crash, and so they didn't survive past that moment. So that
Alive.
Yeah. So that's, you know, in that whole scheme of things, there's 16 people there and only one was able to be a donor. So people might realize the fact that, you know, you have to be in your body has to be in the right state. It has to be in the right place, that you have to be able to be in a place where that they can do the organ retrieval and the recovery, and that there has to be, although there isn't a national registry, there is a national bank of people who are waiting for donations, so that as soon as that they knew that Logan was going to be a donor, they could get in with the national registry of people waiting for transplant, and they could look at that and they could make connections with blood type, with need, with size. Like even size is an issue too. So an age of people. So that went across Canada. And then from Saskatchewan only does RUH, like in Saskatoon only does kidney transplants. Okay. So the organs had to go other places. So some organs went to Edmonton, because in Edmonton they are able to do transplants. But then they have to get the people to Edmonton that will be recipients. And some Logan's organs went to East. So we're about as far as they can travel would be Ontario.
Toronto,
yeah. So
from this location.
So there's like all kinds of factors in there, and to be an organ donor.
And they also have an agreement with the American government that you can transport organs if you have a blood type that's not very rare. It's a very rare blood type, and they have that someone down that's within the flying distance. They'll do that transfer also. But that wasn't Logan's. We've learned a lot.
Yeah,
we're not experts, but we've learned lots.
Absolutely. I was just thinking, do you know, as the family of the donor, do you know what happened to the organs and any history? Do you get to know that information typically?
Wow, that's another story.
Oh, I love it.
Well, so because Logan's transplant or Logan's organ donor or organ recovery came in Saskatchewan, so we're underneath the Saskatchewan Health Authority. So all of the information that we get comes through them, even though most of the transplants didn't occur in Saskatchewan, they occurred at other places. So what happens is any letters that come from recipients will go to the Saskatchewan Health Authority, and specifically to the transplant division in Saskatoon, that they'll look at the letters, they will vet the letters. There can't be anything in them that specifically tells us about the family or about the recipient. And so things will be blacked out, kind of just like when
redacted, like spy letters.
Yes.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Like so like names or anything specific about that. And then if we haven't yet, I would love to do that, because I would love to have a connection to these people. And if we write a letter, it has to be very generic. It can't say our son was a Humboldt Bronco and passed away in the crash, and we can't just be specific like that. It has to be very generic, otherwise that they will go through with the black marker and
they'll take that anyway.
Yeah, so we know that people who have been so Rick Saget's widow Jen has actually been able to connect with people who are recipients of Rick's organs, but their transplant took place in Alberta, so it's a different organization also. And she said that that's been very helpful, and so someday we hope to be able to connect with people. And I mean, I would love to hear Logan's heart beat again.
We have received a letter for one of Logan's kidneys that was donated. We received the letter, and it is from a person in Saskatchewan. That's all we know. And we got the letter, a beautiful letter. We took it to visit Logan at the cemetery. We read it to Logan at the cemetery. We've also received a letter from the heart recipient, which we got last week, but we have not opened it yet. We're going to take it on April 7th and read it to Logan. Now, this show doesn't come out till then, so
Okay.
you know, and that's it. Nobody else knows that.
Nobody else knows we've gotten the letter.
And only Mariko knows. And so we're going to read the heart letter. And the kidney one was beautiful. It wasn't very long, and all that they did was took a big black felt pen and took the name off. And it was handwritten, which made it even more special.
Yeah.
And they keep a photocopy of it in Saskatoon, and then and the originals are sent to us. And so
nice.
we have, like Bernie said, we've not written our letter. The other side of the whole thing is that I'm surprised we got our heart letter so quickly. It's hard. I can only put myself on the other side, and not that it's Bernie's fault or anyone's fault. It's not a fault, but when we say we'd like to hear Logan's heartbeat, they think of YouTube clips they've seen where someone's having a birthday party and someone's got their head against someone's chest, and that person may not want that to happen.
Right.
And so, and also the national scope of the tragedy, if you received a heart on April 8th, because Logan passed on the 7th, but the retrieval didn't happen till the morning on the 8th.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a heart that day in Canada and they only transplanted 39 hearts that year in Canada, then you probably know exactly whose heart you have. And it's really hard to write that. I can only imagine, right? Because they transplanted 39 hearts in 2018. And if you got one on April 8th, you know where that heart came from.
What a heart you got.
It's a pretty strong heart.
Pretty strong heart.
Because Logan's heart, I don't know if you know this or not, or if you read it, it continued to beat by itself. It never stopped. They never had to put in life support. So after Logan passed at 11:45 on April 7th, his heart beat for 27. His heart beat until 2 in the morning. When we walked down there with Logan, and he's on his stretcher on the bed. We walked beside his heart was beating right to the operating room doors, and then we kissed him and hugged him. As Bernie said, they took him in the operating room. His heart was still beating by itself without any help at all. Of course, Logan was on a ventilator to keep his lungs operating, but his heart never stopped. And we've heard that from the lead doctor in ICU that in a transplant situation, that's the strongest heart they've ever transplanted, ever, that they've done a retrieval on. In out of Saskatchewan, they've done a retrieval on. They've never, so it beat on its own without any help at all.
There's a certain poetry in that, honestly. There really, really is.
One of the writers wrote that Logan had another purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so.
And it's like he just, when it happened, everything that falls into place, as tragic and as sad as that is, right? There's certain questions that, in a sense, that get answered for you, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You asked earlier about what kind of a person Logan was,
mm-hmm.
and I kind of got on a tangent.
Yeah, you
sometimes I
kind of went in the
Yeah. And so, do you want us to talk about that now?
Yeah, I do. I really do.
Okay, so one of Logan's big things is that he wanted to be known as more than just a hockey player. So when he was finishing playing junior hockey, he had some offers to go to schools in the States, and but his goal really was to come back home to Lethbridge. He wanted to go to U of L, and he wanted to be a teacher because he wanted to be able to give back. And it's funny because we thought, oh, well, you want to be a high school teacher? And he said, no, I want to be an elementary math teacher. And he said, because if I was an elementary math teacher, I could do all kinds of things with kids and with the younger kids. And he volunteered in my room a few times and did actually a really good job of connecting with kids and connecting with the students and helping them and being patient with them. And so that's what his goal was. And by being an elementary math teacher, he also knew that that would give him some opportunities to be able to coach outside, because his sports that he played were hockey and rugby.
And curling.
And he curled a little bit too, but I'm not sure he could actually coach that.
No.
But he could coach hockey, and he could certainly coach rugby. And that's what he wanted to do. But his big thing was he didn't want to be known as just a hockey player. So he actually is very artistic. He decided, I don't know, when he was in going into grade 12, grade 11, that he maybe wanted to be an architect. So then he decided he was going to take art, and the art teachers at Winston Churchill High School, they were very supportive of him, and they helped push him through art 10, 20, did you do art 32?
Yeah, you got that.
10, 20, and 30, and they helped him be able to push through all of that in a year that he wouldn't be able to normally cover all of that.
We did 20, 30 in a year.
Oh, he did 20 and 30 in a semester.
Yeah.
Anyways, and so he did that. So he actually is very artistic. He's a big thinker. So he would look at things and try to view it from a different way. Logan and Mariko went to Paris together in the spring of 2017, and they went to go visit a cousin of theirs, of Mariko's and Logan's, that lived with her family just out of Paris because her husband's an electrical engineer. And her husband Mike was trying to convince Logan to maybe look at engineering, because he was very intrigued by things like the Eiffel Tower and how the cathedrals were built, and so we had that engineering kind of view of things. So he was trying to get Logan to look at that. So he was very inquisitive. He was artistic. When they were on that trip to Paris, Toby, so their cousin's mom and dad, Toby's sister and brother-in-law were there, and Toby's sister's very artistic and likes to go to art museums, and she and Logan went to the Museum d'Orsay, and they spent a ton of time. Mariko and our brother-in-law Norm were out significantly quicker.
45 minutes, they saw the whole museum. Not Clinton and Logan. They were there for hours.
And they had conversations about artists and the pieces that they did and the techniques, and so that was.
Logan could discuss artists. He could discuss brush strokes. You name it. He could do all those things. He was, as Bernie said, he was a thinker, wonderful mathematician. He played sports. He looked after people. He was caring. He donated his time. In Humboldt, he worked with the Special Olympics team for 3 years in a row. The adult hockey team is one of their volunteer lead coaches, and they loved it. In his billet family, the Paulson said Logan never missed a Monday in the 3 years he was there, other than if they have a game on Monday or they're traveling on a road trip. Logan didn't matter. Gotta eat supper, gotta go. And he's got to go to and so he did those things, and he was just a giving, kind, helping person. Like last year at his golf firm, we have all the volunteers, their golf shirts, the t-shirts they had is having a big logo on there. I said, don't worry, it won't say volunteer. It just said, Logan's shirt said, happy to help. And he had an autograph on the bottom. Logan was happy to help. He was happy to volunteer, happy to work with people. And I think one of his best traits was he's a conversationalist. He would go out of his way when he knew someone who needed a conversation to sit down and converse. Talk to uncles, grandparents, aunts, friends, not friends, just random people. He wasn't very loud. He wasn't like going to go to he wasn't the guy wearing the lampshade on his head at the party, but he would go to things, and he would seek people out and have conversations. He wanted to know about you, and he gave you the time to talk.
We've heard lots of stories about people saying that they would be places and they would see Logan and he would actually talk to them, whether he was in Humboldt or whether he was here. Even our neighbor down the street said one day Logan was going down to get the mail and she was coming out of the house, and he could have just literally said, hey, but he didn't. He stopped and waited for her to get to the sidewalk, and they walked together to the mailbox and got the mail and then walked back. And so just even being able to take that time that others may not. When he was a 20-year-old kid that was in the neighborhood, or he took that time to make people feel important, and that the time that he was spending with them mattered.
It sounds to me like the strength of his heart was directly in proportion to the strength of his thirst for life and living and experience. And he drank up everything that he possibly could, in every possible moment and person and experience. What an incredibly well-rounded, mature individual.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Well,
Let's hope he wasn't always.
We're not talking about trying to get him to clean his room or else. Can you get off the couch? We're eating right away. What do you mean? We're going to eat sooner than later. Like that's
You mean he was a normal teenager?
well at home. But he wasn't. He wasn't. I can only remember once getting actually. We're talking like terrible twos.
Yeah.
I can only remember once actually having an argument and getting mad at him. I racked my brains, and I can only remember one, and I actually got mad.
Yeah.
He was very, I don't know, easygoing young man. He could, and that's one of the things we do is we talked earlier about stories. At Logan's funeral, it was a very large funeral. One of Bernie's cousins said, "Well, make a book and have different colors, and you can write here's a card, put a story on it." Well, we've got like 400 stories from that funeral that people took the time to write stories. Then so we thought, well, for his birthdays, we put a little thing out and people write stories. And for Christmas, we've had 2 Christmases now. And on my side and Bernie's side, we put it out. And before we open the gifts, people have written a story. And then we read the story. Marika, our daughter, reads the stories. And then we open our gifts. So we've got a collection of 500 or more stories that we weren't there when the story happened. We weren't there. And it's not surprising, but it is surprising how many people's stories center around having a conversation that Logan took the time to reach out and seem to know when someone wanted to talk.
That really resonates with me actually, because I only knew my husband the 6 years that I knew him. And then when he passed, he left a son, and he has very few family. And I would get stories about his childhood and about what he was like in high school, or all of these things and pieces of things that I never knew, and realized how what an incredible gift that is, because now I can actually share that with his son who wouldn't have that information at all, right? So the stories are the very, very best. So again, folks, if you have a story about Logan, you know how you can reach the Boulets. I also want to make sure that we plug in Green Shirt website. It's www.greenshirtday.ca. There you can not just order your t-shirt and find out about organ donation, but there's tons of other resources on the site. Could you speak to that for a little bit?
Go ahead.
Well, unfortunately, because of COVID-19 and we're not in schools, there is a whole package that is actually was created for schools to use, possibilities of different things that they could do at the school, from assemblies to promoting Green Shirt Day to announcements that you could have on your for morning announcements and things like that. So there's that whole package which we will just use going forward till next year. And then there's packages for businesses and organizations that they can use to prep for next year, and what they would like to do. Because right now, many people have a little bit of extra time that they can do those kind of things. There's also posters that you can print off to be able to put up. There are banners that you can check out, and there's just information about where to go to be an organ donor. Just if you're having that, for each province, because the website was actually built out of BC, but it has province across the nation. It has information just about organ transplant and organ donation registration, and organs that can be transplanted and what organs are transplantable. So that's kind of things that you can find there. It has a little bit of a history of, or a background of Logan and the Humboldt Broncos, and why Logan made the decision that he did. And so there's it's just kind of, the site has very much evolved. It's
a very nice website. It has lots to it, lots of links. The donation of organs, you link right to the Canadian Blood Services website, and you go in there and they have links to that. And then you go to their section and it goes, oh, Manitoba, hit the Manitoba circle. You're right on the Manitoba website and right to where they link to register.
It is very clear.
It's a very I'll say it's a very slick website.
I think so too.
I go on lots of websites in schools, and some are like, oh, must have been a grade 4 kid made this website. Sometimes like, who made this? But it's very slick. It's very professional. It's well done.
Yes, yeah. And it's beautiful, actually. It really is beautiful. It's touching. I think it really hits home some of the points for sure. Just like you guys did today, honestly. we could talk forever, I know, but this is a very busy time for you. I do want to maybe close with this question. I wonder often how sometimes our loved one thinks about what's going on in our lives now, if they were watching. What do you think Logan would be saying about everything that's happened since?
This is Bernie's answer.
I really think that he'd be going like, this is way too much. This is like, I don't need all this recognition. Logan is very much the support guy. Like, I'm not here to be the front guy to get all the attention. I was the guy that included people and made sure that people were included, and he'd just be going like, okay, this is enough. This is a little overwhelming. I don't need all of this attention.
No, you talk about leadership. Logan was a leader, and so he would see exactly what Bernie said, and some of the stories we've gotten from Logan and that have been also in the papers, that Logan wasn't an in-your-face guy. He wasn't the guy that's going to get everybody riled up to go perform. He's the guy that's going to say, we need to take it easy, relax. And someone's having a meltdown, he would deal with that and get the group together by going individually and finding out what your issue is, because he had built relationships.
Right.
So this whole, having a Green Shirt Day website,
he would
I think he'd just be going.
Then having his picture on there, I don't know if that would go very well, but it doesn't matter, right? We control it now because this is what he wanted. This is what Logan wanted. This is what he wanted to do. He told me clearly. He told McLaren clearly. The tragedy happened. Bernie and I, it's like 3 weeks after, during the tragedy when Logan was going to pass, Neil Longman, who's Logan's godfather, he was kind of our liaison, because you can only imagine, as you know, how many texts and phone calls. We waste our time on our phone. So I just told Neil, put something on Facebook, just deal with it. Yeah. So Neil and Carrie Roundtree wrote up a comment, and then that's when it went, basically, lack of a better term, viral. It went boom, it exploded, and the Logan Boulay effect was born. Mm-hmm. Then you move 3 weeks down the road, and we're sitting at our house, and we had visitors for literally months, because if your front door is open, that means come on in. And we're sitting there 3 weeks after, Neil turns to me and says, they're going to come. I go, who's going to come? He says, I have no idea, but they're going to come. Because they were coming already. They're coming and coming. And so sure enough, we got the phone call from David Peckham, who runs the Green Shirt Day camp. We call him our team leader. He's the team leader. And Neil was right. David came. And from that, we're where we're at today.
And David Peckham, just to reiterate, is sort of the operations man behind Green Shirt Day.
Yeah.
Yes, he's the guy that puts everything together. He's the one that collects the sponsors. No money's made on Green Shirt Day. We don't raise money. People donate money to Canadian Transplant Association, but he's the one that puts all the pieces of the puzzle together to make the campaign happen, because the campaign costs money. Right. And so you have to get sponsors, and he does all that. And Global puts out $500,000 of PSAs and public service announcements, and Vistaprint creates the shirts, and they're not going to make any money on the shirts this year. So it's all, and then kidneys in and livers in, and I don't know who's all in the
Canadian Transplant
Association, Canadian Blood Services. And next year we have more are coming in. So, and it's just money goes in.
Yeah.
And it runs the campaign. The more money comes in, the bigger the campaign can be.
The bigger
That's
the
all
campaign
it is.
can be.
That's all, and then
it's
people
to get
do
those
donate money.
4,300 people off those lists.
Try to make that list smaller. And of course, the pandemic we're in now, it's affecting that tremendously, but that's different.
Thank you so much. Once again, we're here with Bernie and Toby Boulay, parents of Logan Boulay, honoring Green Shirt Day and working together to increase donor and organ donation awareness around the country and hopefully beyond, who knows. If you're inclined at all to become a donor, please go to the website www.greenshirtday.ca. It's a beautiful website. And thank you for joining us on Get Naked with Dawn. I'm your host, Dawn Style-Verch with Jess FM. You can find us on jessfm.ca. You can go to our YouTube and Facebook sites through there. And don't forget to download our free app, Jess FM. Thank you so much today. It is Green Shirt Day, April 7th of 2020. Good night.